A 19-year-old widow infiltrates the outlaw gang that murdered her husband disguised as a saloon dancer in the Arizona territory. But when she discovers the bartender is a former gang member and the gang leader isn't the monster she imagined, Sarah Chen-Morrison must choose between the revenge that's consumed her for 6 months and a truth that could heal both her shattered heart and a corrupt territory. In a world where justice and vengeance blur like desert heat, one woman's quest for blood becomes a fight for redemption that will cost her everything she thought she wanted and give her everything she never knew she needed. If you love stories of second chances, slow burn romance, and the Old West, like you've never seen it before, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. This is a journey you won't want to miss. You're allowed to live. Widow hunts husband's killers until Gunslinger offers second chance. The Santa Fe wind carried the scent of sage and sorrow. Sarah Chen-Morrison stood before a simple wooden cross, her black mourning dress gathering dust at the hem. The cemetery stretched behind her in neat rows, but she saw none of it. Her world had narrowed to the single patch of earth, to the name carved in weathered wood. Daniel Morrison, beloved husband, 1859 to 1883. 6 months. It had been 6 months since she'd held him as he died. Her fingers traced the letters of his name, wood rough beneath her touch. The sun beat down merciless and bright, the way it always did in New Mexico territory, indifferent to grief. A mockingbird called from a nearby juniper, and Sarah wanted to scream at it, to demand silence, to insist the whole world stop turning because hers had ended on a dusty Arizona road. But the world didn't stop. It never did. She knelt in the dirt, not caring that the dust would stain her dress. From her leather satchel, she withdrew 3 objects. First, a bullet-casing brass gondole, but wrapped in gold wire at the base, the signature of the Dalton gang. Every lawman in the territory knew Sarah. Second, a photograph so faded she could barely make out the faces anymore. Her and Daniel on their wedding day, both of them so young, so impossibly young. Third, his journal leather binding, cracked from where she'd read it 1,000 times, searching for answers in his careful handwriting. "I found them," she whispered to the cross. "It took 4 months, but I found where they drink, where they sleep, where they count their blood money." The wind picked up, tugging at her hair. She'd worn it down today the way Daniel had loved it, long and black and wild. "They say revenge is a dish best served cold." Her voice barely rose above the whisper of the wind. But in the Arizona desert, nothing stays cold for long. She stood brushing dirt from her knees. The mourning dress would go into the trunk tonight. Tomorrow she would become someone else entirely. Someone who danced and smiled and laughed while her heart plotted murder. Someone named Scarlet Song. The memory hit her without warning, the way it always did. 6 months ago, the Arizona road. Daniel's horse had come back without him, stirrups, empty saddle askew. She'd known immediately. Had felt it in her bones the moment the horse appeared on the horizon. She'd found him 3 miles out, lying in the red dirt. 3 bullet wounds. Chest, shoulder, abdomen. The gang had left him to die slow. "Sarah." His voice had been wet, bubbling. Blood on his lips. "Sarah, I'm sorry. Don't talk. I'll get help. No time." His hand had found hers, squeezed with the last of his strength. "Listen, the papers? In my saddlebag, important. Get them too." But he never finished. His eyes had fixed on something beyond her shoulder, something she couldn't see. And then he was gone. She'd held him as the sun set, as the desert painted itself in oranges and purples and reds, the color of his blood. Held him until the stars came out. Held him until a passing rancher found them and gently, so gently, pulled her away. The saddlebag had been empty. Whatever Daniel had been carrying, the gang had taken. Sarah blinked back to the present, to the cemetery, to the cross that marked the place where her old life ended. "I don't know what you were protecting," she said softly. "I don't know why they killed you, but I'll find out, and I'll make them pay." She placed a single white rose at the base of the cross. Then she turned and walked away, her shadow long in the afternoon sun. Behind her, the mockingbird kept singing. The stage to Tucson left at dawn. Sarah boarded with a small trunk and a smaller carpet bag. Inside the trunk, 3 performance costumes, a pair of dancing shoes, cosmetics, and a Derringer pistol small enough to hide in a garter. Inside the carpet bag, ammunition, Daniel's journal, the gold-wrapped bullet casing, and every cent she owned in the world. $73. Enough to last maybe 2 months if she was careful. The other passengers eyed her with curiosity. A tiny woman traveling alone, barely 5 feet 2 inches, Chinese features softened by her Irish mother's influence, dressed in a plain gray traveling dress that showed none of the fire beneath. They saw a widow, perhaps, a seamstress, or a teacher seeking work in a growing town. They didn't see the pistol, didn't see the rage. The journey took 3 days. Sarah spent them rehearsing her new identity, practicing her smile in the small mirror she carried. Scarlet Song, dancer from San Francisco, orphaned young, raised in a mission, looking for work in the saloons and dance halls of the Arizona territory. All of it true except the name and the purpose. On the third afternoon, Tucson rose from the desert like a fever dream. Adobe buildings baked brown in the sun, wooden storefronts with peeling paint, horses tied to hitching posts, tails swishing at flies. And there on the edge of town, painted red as fresh blood, the Red Canyon Saloon. Her destination, her hunting ground. Sarah checked into a boarding house first, a clean room with a bed and a wash basin run by a Mexican woman who asked no questions. She paid for a week in advance, then set about transforming herself. The morning dress went into the trunk. In its place, she donned a costume she'd spent 2 months perfecting. Silk and deep crimson, cut in the Chinese style but shortened for dancing. A fan painted with cherry blossoms tucked into her sash. Her hair pinned up with lacquered sticks. Rouge on her lips and cheeks, kohl around her eyes. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. "Hello, Scarlett," she whispered. The Red Canyon Saloon smelled of whiskey, tobacco, and sweat. Sarah pushed through the swinging doors just after sunset when the place was filling with miners' ranch hands and men whose professions she didn't want to know. A piano played something jaunty in the corner. Laughter erupted from a poker table. Somewhere glass shattered and someone cursed. The bartender looked up as she approached. Sarah's breath caught. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block out the lamp behind him. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples, despite his relative youth. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Pale blue, almost gray, sharp with intelligence, and something else. Wariness. The eyes of a man who'd seen too much. And running from his left ear down the side of his neck, disappearing beneath his collar, a burn scar puckered and white. "Help you." His voice was low, rough as gravel. Sarah forced her practiced smile. "I'm looking for the owner. I heard he might need a dancer." Those pale eyes traveled over her, assessing, but not leering. "That's so. I've performed in San Francisco, Denver, Santa Fe. I can dance traditional Chinese flamenco, even some ballet." All true, the Mission Sisters had believed in education of all kinds. "I'm good, and I work cheap. Owner's in the back, but we don't usually hire dancers without an audition." He gestured to the small stage at the far end of the saloon. "You want the job? Show me what you've got." Sarah's heart hammered. This wasn't how she'd planned it. She'd meant to speak to the owner, first negotiate in private. But every eye in the saloon was on her now, and backing down would raise suspicion. "Now?" she asked. "You said you're good." Was that amusement in his eyes? "Prove it." She lifted her chin. "Fine, but I'll need music." The bartender called to the piano player. "Jimmy, give the lady something exotic." Sarah walked to the stage, her silk dress whispering with each step. The saloon quieted. Curious faces turned her way. In the back corner, she spotted them, 3 men in a private booth, whiskey glasses gleaming. One of them was older, gray-haired, with military bearing, despite his civilian clothes. Victor Dalton. She'd memorized his face from wanted posters. Her hands shook. She hid them in her sleeves. The piano began something slow, serpentine. Sarah closed her eyes, found her center, and began to move. She'd spent years learning the fan dance from an old woman in Santa Fe's Chinatown. Learned the way silk could become water, the way a fan could slice air like a blade. She let her body remember, let it take over while her mind stayed cold and calculating. The fan snapped open. Crimson silk swirled. She moved like flame, like wind, like nothing the men in this saloon had ever seen. She incorporated the flamenco Daniel had taught her, sharp footwork, proud carriage blending, east and west, until they became something new entirely. The saloon held its breath. When she finished, frozen in her final pose, the silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then the room erupted. Applause whistles, the slam of glasses on tables. Sarah straightened slowly, her chest heaving. Through the noise, she found the bartender's eyes. He was smiling, but it didn't reach those pale blue depths. He knew. Somehow he knew she wasn't what she claimed. "You're hired," called a voice from the back. A portly man in a brocade vest, the owner, she guessed. "$20 a week plus tips. You start tomorrow night." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. She descended from the stage and the bartender was there, a glass of water in his hand. "You'll want this," he said. "Name's Jace Reeves." She took the water, their fingers brushing. His hands were rough, calloused from hard work. "Scarlet Song." "Thank you." "Scarlet." He said it like he was tasting the name, testing its truth. "Interesting choice." "My mother's favorite color." "That's so." He leaned against the bar, those eyes never leaving her face. "Funny thing, I've known a lot of dancers, Chinese, Irish, Mexican, you name it, but I've never seen one who kept her hand on her hip like she was reaching for a gun." Sarah's blood went cold. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't." Jace turned back to his bottles, began polishing a glass. "Word of advice, Miss Song. Whatever you're really here for, be careful. Tucson isn't kind to liars." He walked away before she could respond, leaving Sarah standing at the bar with her heart in her throat. She'd been in town for 3 hours and already her cover was compromised. Sarah's first week at the Red Canyon passed in a blur of whiskey fumes and wandering hands. She learned the rhythm of the place, how the miners came in loud and left louder, how the ranch hands drank slow and steady, nursing their wages, how the gamblers watched everyone with calculating eyes, reading tells in the way men held their cards, and how every Friday night Victor Dalton and his men occupied the back corner booth. She learned other things too, learned that Jace Reeves ran the bar with quiet authority, breaking up fights with a calm word and a hard stare. Learned that he lived in the rooms above the saloon, rarely ventured out during daylight. Learned that he'd bought into the saloon 2 years ago, though no one seemed to know where he'd gotten the money. Most importantly, she learned to listen. The Dalton gang didn't try to hide. They drank openly, laughed, openly spoke, just quietly enough that their words didn't carry. But Sarah was small, invisible in her way. She danced and served drinks and smiled, and all the while her ears strained for every scrap of information. On her 5th night, she finally heard something useful. "Big job end of the month," one of Dalton's men was saying. "A lean, mean-looking man named McLean. Railway office. Should be enough to fund us through winter." Victor Dalton's response was too quiet to hear. Sarah moved closer, using the excuse of collecting empty glasses. "Can't keep this up forever," Dalton was saying. "Eventually, the marshals will—" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes locked on Sarah. For one terrible moment, she thought he recognized her. Thought he saw past the makeup and the costume to the widow standing in a Santa Fe cemetery, swearing vengeance. But then he smiled. "Another whiskey, darling." "Of course," her voice stayed steady. Years of mission school had taught her that. Always steady, always controlled. She brought the bottle, poured with hands that didn't shake. Dalton's eyes followed her movements, but not with suspicion. With something else. Appreciation, perhaps. Or assessment. "You're new," he said, not a question. 2 weeks tomorrow. Chinese half, my mother was Irish. Interesting combination." He sipped his whiskey. "You dance beautifully. Reminds me of, well, someone I used to know." Sarah's throat tightened. "Thank you, sir." "Victor. Call me Victor." He leaned back, studying her. "Tell me, Scarlett, what brings a talented dancer to a dusty town like Tucson?" She'd prepared for this question. "Same thing that brings everyone west, I suppose. New beginnings, fresh starts. Running from something or running towards something. Is there a difference?" Victor laughed at that, a genuine sound that surprised her. "Smart girl. Stick around, Scarlett. I think you'll do well here." He turned back to his men, dismissing her. Sarah returned to the bar, her legs trembling. She'd spoken to him. Looked into the eyes of the man who'd ordered her husband's death, and he'd smiled at her. "Careful." Jace's voice low and close. He was beside her, ostensibly organizing bottles, but his attention was all on her. "I don't know what you mean." "Victor Dalton is a dangerous man to catch the eye of." Sarah met his gaze. "I'm just doing my job." "That what you call it?" Jace's jaw tightened. "I've been watching you, Scarlett. Watching the way you watch him. You are playing a game you don't understand." "You don't know anything about me." I know you're not a professional marketer. Real professionals don't carry derringers in their garters. He said it so quietly, so calmly. I know you're here for Dalton. I know you're going to get yourself killed. Sarah's hand moved to her hip where the small gun rested beneath silk. How did you, Paul? Second performance. You bent to pick up your fan and your dress rode up. Saw the gun clear as day. Jace finally looked at her and his eyes were hard. So I'll ask you straight. What's your real business with Victor Dalton? The saloon noise swirled around him, piano music, laughter, the click of poker chips. A bubble of noise that somehow made their conversation feel private, intimate. Sarah made a choice, a calculated risk. He killed my husband. Jace went very still. You sure about that? I'm sure he ordered it 6 months ago. Arizona Road between Prescott and Phoenix. She watched his face looking for recognition. 3 bullets, gold-wrapped casing left behind. Something flickered in Jace's eyes, not surprise. Knowledge. You knew, Sarah breathed. You knew about Daniel. I know a lot of things. Jace's voice had gone flat. Doesn't mean I can change them. But you know who killed him, who pulled the trigger. Maybe. Sarah's hand closed on his wrist hard enough to hurt. Tell me. Miss Song. Jace's voice stayed level, but there was warning in it. You're making a scene. She looked around. Several patrons were watching them with interest. McLean's eyes had narrowed. She released Jace's wrist, stepped back, forced a smile. My apologies. Too much whiskey. Go home, Jace said quietly. Sleep it off. We'll talk later. Tomorrow, after closing, meet me in the storage room. He turned away back to his bottles and his customers. And Scarlett, don't do anything stupid before then. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay in her boarding house bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Jace Reeves knew something. Knew about Daniel, about the gold-wrapped bullets, about the Dalton gang's methods. Which meant he was either law unlikely given his wariness, or he was connected to the gang himself. The thought made her stomach turn. But he'd offered to talk, offered information. That was more than she'd managed to get in 2 weeks of dancing and eavesdropping. She rose before dawn, unable to stand the confinement of her room any longer. She dressed in her plainest clothes, a simple brown dress, her hair in a braid, and walked through Tucson's empty streets. The town looked different in early light, softer, the harsh edges smoothed by the pink-gold glow of sunrise. She passed the general store, the church, the small schoolhouse with its crooked fence. Normal life, the kind she and Daniel had planned for. They were going to have children. 3, they'd decided. 2 boys and a girl. They'd buy land, raise cattle, build a home with a porch where they could watch the sunset. Simple dreams. Impossible now. She found herself at the edge of town looking out at the desert. Somewhere out there, Daniel had died alone. Well, not alone. She'd been there at the end, but alone in the moment it mattered when the bullets tore through him. I'm sorry, she whispered to the wind. I'm sorry I wasn't fast enough to save you. But I swear, Daniel, I swear I'll make them pay. The wind offered no answer. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Sarah performed her usual routine. Rose late practiced her dances, ate a small meal at the boarding house. Arrived at the Red Canyon an hour before opening to prepare. Jace was already there setting up the bar. He acknowledged her with a nod, but said nothing. Professional distance. Smart. The evening crowd was lighter than usual. Saturday nights brought the chaos. Fridays were for the regulars, the men who drank steady and quiet. Sarah danced 3 times, collected modest tips, fended off 2 marriage proposals, and 1 significantly less honorable offer. Dalton and his men didn't come. McLean appeared briefly, drank 2 whiskeys in silence, and left. By midnight, the saloon was nearly empty. The owner had left an hour ago. The last patron stumbled out at 12:30. Jace began the closing routine, collecting glasses, wiping tables, banking the fire in the stove. Sarah waited on the stage, still in her costume, her heart hammering. Finally, Jace looked up. Storage room, back corner. She followed him through the saloon, through a narrow door, into a room that smelled of dust and old wood. Crates of whiskey stacked to the ceiling. Sacks of grain, extra chairs with broken legs awaiting repair. Jace lit a small oil lamp, closed the door. The space suddenly felt very small. Talk, Sarah said. You first. Tell me about your husband and Why? Because I need to know if you're just looking for revenge or if you actually give a damn about the truth. Sarah's jaw tightened. His name was Daniel Morrison, 24 years old. We were married a year. He worked as a courier carrying mail and packages between territories. 6 months ago, he took a just carrying documents from Prescott to Phoenix. He never made it. What kind of documents? I don't know. His saddlebags were empty when I found him. Jace was quiet for a long moment. Did he ever mention a Judge Blackwood? Sarah's breath caught. No. Who is that federal judge based in Phoenix? He's been investigating corruption in the territorial government for 2 years. Jace leaned against a crate, his face half-shadowed. About 8 months ago, someone started feeding him evidence. Paper trails, financial records, witness statements. The kind of evidence that could bring down half the territory's power structure. What does that have to do with Daniel? Your husband was a courier, you said. Smart way to move sensitive documents. No one pays attention to the mail. Jace's eyes met hers. I think Daniel was killed because of what he was carrying, and I don't think Victor Dalton ordered it. Sarah's world tilted. You're lying. Am I? Jace straightened, took a step closer. The Dalton gang robs stages, trains, banks. They don't assassinate couriers unless there's money involved. Your husband wasn't carrying money. He was carrying evidence. How do you know all this? Jace was silent. Sarah's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. His wariness, his knowledge of Dalton's operations, the way he'd bought into the saloon with money from an unknown source. You were one of them, she said slowly. You were in the Dalton gang. Was, past tense. When did you leave? Two years ago. That's before Daniel died. Yes. Prove it. Without a word, Jace began unbuttoning his shirt. Sarah tensed, but he wasn't looking at her with desire, just grim purpose. He opened his shirt, revealing a chest marked with old scars, and there over his heart, a tattoo, an intricate design of a coiled snake with a gun in its mouth, the Dalton gang's signature mark. But across the tattoo, cutting through it, were 3 raised scars, deliberately placed, ritual scarification. When you leave the gang, Jace said quietly, you have to mark yourself. Prove you're willing to suffer for the break, 3 cuts deep enough to scar through the tattoo. He rebuttoned his shirt. I left 2 years ago because my sister died. Emily, 16 years old, consumption. I didn't have the money for a doctor, for medicine, because I'd spent my life stealing instead of earning. She died in my arms, hating me for what I'd become. His voice had gone rough. Sarah saw the pain there, raw and real. After Emily died, I took every cent I'd saved and bought into this saloon, tried to go straight, build something clean. Jace met her eyes. Then 8 months ago, Dalton's gang hit that courier. Word got around about what happened. Man shot 3 times left to bleed out. I started asking questions. Why? Because it didn't fit Dalton's pattern. He's a lot of things, but he's not cruel. Quick deaths, minimal violence. That's always been his rule. Jace's jaw tightened. So I dug deeper, found out your husband was carrying evidence for Judge Blackwood. Found out someone wanted that evidence buried. Who? I don't know for sure, but I have suspicions. Sarah was trembling now. 6 months. 6 months she'd blamed Victor Dalton, built her entire purpose around killing him, and now this could be a lie, she said. You could be protecting him. I could be, but I'm not. Jace pulled something from his pocket, a folded piece of paper yellowed with age. Found this in McLean's saddlebag 2 months ago when he got drunk and passed out in the storeroom. Thought you might want it. Sarah took the paper with shaking hands, unfolded it. It was a letter, Daniel's handwriting. She'd know it anywhere. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The documents I'm carrying could change everything for this territory. Expose the corruption that strangled justice here. But I know it's dangerous. If something happens to me, know that I did it because I believed it mattered. Don't let rage consume you. You have so much love to give. Give it to someone who deserves it. Live the life we dreamed about. All my love. Daniel, the paper crumpled in her fist. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He knew, she whispered. He knew it might kill him, and he did it anyway. He was brave or stupid. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Jace's voice was gentle. The question is, what are you going to do now? Sarah looked up at him, this stranger with secrets in his eyes and scars on his skin. You said you have suspicions about who wanted Daniel dead. Who? McLean, Victor's second in command. You're sure? Sure enough, McLean's been spending money he shouldn't have. New guns, expensive saddle gold watch. He's getting paid by someone and it's not from gang jobs. Who's paying him? That's what we need to find out. Jace hesitated. I've been watching Dalton watching McLean, waiting for proof, but I can't get close enough. I'm an ex-member. They don't trust me fully. But they trust a dancer. Maybe, if she's smart, if she doesn't get herself killed first. Jace stepped closer. I'll help you, Sarah, not for revenge, for justice, for your husband and for my sister and for every other innocent person this corruption has destroyed. But you have to trust me. Sarah looked at the letter in her hands, Daniel's last words. He'd asked her to let go of rage to live fully. But justice wasn't rage. Justice was necessary. Okay, she said quietly. I'll trust you. For now. For now is good enough. Jace extended his hand. Sarah took it. His grip was firm, warm, solid. Partners, he asked. Partners. And with that handshake, everything changed. They made their first move 3 nights later. Dalton was hosting a small gathering at his ranch outside town. Not a full gang meeting, something more exclusive. McLean would be there. So would 2 other core members. Jace and Sarah arrived separately. Jace driving a wagon loaded with whiskey barrels, a legitimate delivery. Sarah hidden among the barrels, barely breathing in the cramped space. The ranch was smaller than Sarah expected. Adobe buildings arranged around a dusty courtyard, horses in a corral, a barn that had seen better days. Nothing grand, nothing that suggested the wealth of a successful outlaw. Jace carried the first barrel into the main house, came back for the second. On the third trip, Sarah slipped out, crouching behind the wagon. The sun was setting, shadows growing long. Perfect cover. She moved like smoke, like Daniel had taught her. He'd been a hunter before he became a courier, could track anything across any terrain. Had shown her how to step lightly, how to breathe quietly, how to disappear. The main house had a window half open. Sarah crept close, pressed herself against the adobe wall. Inside, voices. Can't keep raiding forever, Victor was saying. We need one big score, something that sets us up properly. The railway office, McLean replied. End of month. Payroll shipment plus the land office records. Too risky. Federal marshals have been sniffing around. Which is why we need to move now before they get organized. A third voice, younger. What about the governor? He promised protection if we... The governor, Victor interrupted, is a liar and a fool. We can't trust him. Silence. Then McLean. Maybe we should reconsider that alliance. No, we work alone. We always have. Sarah strained to hear more, but footsteps approached the window. She ducked away, heart pounding, and scrambled back toward the wagon. Jace was waiting, his face tight. Get in, now. She dove into the barrel compartment. Jace threw a tarp over her, then drove the wagon out at a leisurely pace, calling goodbyes. Only when they were a mile from the ranch did he stop and let her out. Did you hear anything? He asked. Sarah told him everything. The railway office, the governor, McLean's suggestion to reconsider the alliance. Jace's expression grew grim. So McLean is working with the governor. That's our connection. But Victor refused. He doesn't know. Which makes Victor Dalton a loose end. Jace met her eyes. If I'm right about this, McLean will try to eliminate him soon. Probably make it look like the marshals did it. We need proof, Sarah said. Real proof, not just overheard conversations. Agreed at them. But where he stopped, stared at Sarah with sudden intensity. What? She asked. Victor's office. When they were talking, were they in the main room or somewhere private? Private. Sounded like it was off to the swim. His study. That's where he keeps records, correspondence, everything. Jace began pacing. If McLean's been communicating with the governor, there might be letters, payment records. So we go back, break in when the ranch is empty. No, too risky during the day. Jace stopped pacing. But there's a poker game Thursday night. Dalton hosts it monthly, invites wealthy ranchers, merchants. They play until dawn. Perfect distraction, except you can't get in without an invitation. Sarah smiled slowly. I don't need an invitation. I'll be the entertainment. Oh yeah. Thursday arrived with clear skies and mounting tension. Sarah spent the day preparing. She'd pitched the idea to Dalton 2 days prior, live entertainment for his poker game. Chinese fan dancing, maybe some Spanish guitar. He'd agreed immediately, delighted by the novelty. Jace would come with her as security, ostensibly to protect his investment, the saloon star dancer. Really to watch her back. They arrived at sunset. The ranch was transformed. Lanterns hung in the courtyard. The main house glowed with light. Expensive horses filled the corral. These were men of means. Victor greeted them at the door, his usual courtesy on display. Scarlet excellent. And Jace, good to see you, old friend. Old friend, the words made Sarah's skin crawl. Inside the main room had been cleared for a poker table. 8 men sat around it, cigars smoking, whiskey flowing. Sarah recognized a few faces: the owner of Tucson's largest dry goods store, a rancher from the North Valley, a lawyer with political ambitions. And there at Victor's right hand, McLean, watching her with eyes like a snake. Sarah performed first. The same fan dance that had gotten her hired but refined, now polished. The men watched with appreciation, applauded generously. Victor in particular seemed pleased. Magnificent, he said when she finished. Reminds me of a girl I knew in San Francisco, years ago. His eyes grew distant. She danced like water. Like you. Sarah smiled, her heart cold. You flatter me, sir. Not at all. In fact, Victor gestured to the hallway. I have something you might appreciate. A memento from that time. Would you like to see? This was it. Her chance. I'd be honored. Jace's eyes met hers across the room. A warning. She gave the slightest nod. Victor led her down the hallway into his study. The room was exactly as she'd imagined. Desk heavy with papers, bookshelves lined with ledgers, a gun rack on the wall, and there in the corner a small shrine. A photograph of a young woman, the dancer he'd mentioned. A dried rose in a glass case. Her name was May, Victor said softly. She died 20 years ago. Cholera outbreak in San Francisco. I was young, stupid. Thought I had all the time in the world to tell her I loved her. He touched the glass case gently. I never got the chance. Sarah felt something twist in her chest. This wasn't the monster she'd imagined. This was a man shaped by loss, just like her. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. The past makes fools of us all. Victor turned back to her. But the future we can still shape. He returned to the poker game, leaving Sarah alone in the study. She had perhaps 3 minutes, maybe less. She moved fast, rifled through the desk drawers, found ledgers, records of gang activities, payouts, expenses, but nothing about the governor. Nothing about Daniel. The bookshelves next. She pulled ledgers at random, flipped through them. Numbers, dates, names, all gang business. Nothing useful. Time was running out. Then she saw it, a locked drawer in the desk, small, easy to miss. Sarah pulled a hairpin from her hair. Daniel had taught her this too during their long evenings together. Lock-picking was a useful skill on the frontier. The lock clicked open, inside letters, a stack of them tied with string. Sarah grabbed the whole bundle, shoved it inside her dress bodice, closed the drawer, relocked it. Footsteps in the hallway. She spun toward the bookshelf, pulled down a random ledger, and was pretending to admire its binding when McLean appeared in the doorway. Lost sweetheart, Sarah's blood went cold, but she smiled. Just admiring Mr. Dalton's collection. He has wonderful taste. McLean stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. You know, he said conversationally, I've been wondering about you. Pretty little thing like you wasting her time in a 2-bit saloon. Doesn't add up. I'm just a dancer. Are you? McLean moved closer. Too close. Sarah could smell whiskey on his breath. Because dancers don't usually watch Victor the way you watch him, like you're memorizing his every move. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. McLean's hand shot out, grabbed her wrist. Think you're here for a reason, and I think it's time you told me what it is. Sarah twisted, trying to pull free, but his grip was iron. His other hand went to her throat, squeezed. Let's try this again, he said softly. Who sent you the marshals? Judge Blackwood. Black spots danced in Sarah's vision. She clawed at his hand, gasping. The study door burst open. Victor Dalton stood there, a gun in his hand, not pointed at Sarah, pointed at McLean. Let her go. McLean froze. Victor, she's a spy. I said, let her go. McLean released her. Sarah collapsed against the desk, coughing, her throat on fire. Victor stepped into the room, his gun never wavering. Miss Song, are you hurt? Sarah shook her head, not trusting her voice. Good. Victor's attention shifted to McLean. We don't war on women. You know the rules. She's not what she seems. Neither are any of us. Victor's voice went cold. But we have standards. We have lines we don't cross. You just crossed one. Boss, The gunshot was deafening in the small room. McLean screamed, crumpled blood spreading from his shoulder. Non-lethal, but painful. Get out, Victor said quietly. Get that wound tended, and if I ever catch you laying hands on a woman again, the next bullet goes through your heart. McLean staggered out, cursing under his breath. Victor lowered his gun, looked at Sarah with something like regret. My apologies. McLean has been difficult lately. Sarah's hand went to her throat. She could feel bruises forming. Why did you save me? The words came out hoarse. Because whatever you're here for, and I suspect I know what it is, you deserve the truth, not violence. Victor holstered his gun. I know you're not just a dancer, Scarlett, or should I say Sarah Chen-Morrison. The world stopped. You knew, Sarah whispered. I guessed. You have your husband's eyes. Same shape, same way of looking at people, like you're seeing right through them. Victor sat on the edge of his desk. I'm sorry about Daniel, truly. He didn't deserve what happened. You killed him. No. Victor's voice was firm. I didn't, and neither did anyone under my command, not under my orders. Liar. I'm many things, Sarah, but I'm not a liar. Victor pulled a small object from his pocket, a gold-wrapped bullet casing. McLean leaves these at crime scenes. It's his signature, not mine. I only learned about it 2 months ago. Sarah stared at the casing, identical to the one she'd found at Daniel's death site. McLean killed your husband, Victor continued, acting on orders from someone else, someone who wanted the evidence Daniel was carrying. The governor. Victor's eyes sharpened. You've done your homework. McLean works for the governor, has been for months. Sarah's voice was stronger now. You're just a convenient scapegoat. When the time is right, they'll kill you and blame it on the marshals. I suspected as much. Victor stood, walked to the window. I started this gang for one reason, my son. Thomas, 18 years old, hanged for a murder he didn't commit. The real killer was the territorial governor's nephew. But the governor buried the evidence, bribed the judge, and my boy died swinging from a rope. His voice cracked. Sarah saw his reflection in the window, a man carrying unbearable grief. I thought if I could gather enough money, enough influence, I could expose the governor, bring him to justice. Victor laughed bitterly. But all I've done is become another outlaw, another piece of the corruption I wanted to destroy. Sarah's hands trembled. Every certainty she'd built over 6 months was crumbling. What do you want from me? She asked. The same thing you want. Justice, real justice, not just revenge. Victor turned to face her. Your husband was carrying evidence that could bring down the governor and his network. If we could find that evidence, finish what Daniel started, it's gone, taken. Maybe, or maybe McLean hid it. Insurance against the day the governor turns on him. Victor's eyes met hers. Help me find it. Help me make this right. Not for me, for Daniel, for Tom, for everyone this corruption has destroyed. Sarah's mind raced. Trust him, the man she'd spent 6 months preparing to kill, but he'd saved her, had told her the truth, had shown her his own grief, his own rage for justice. And the letters hidden in her bodice, they might hold answers. I need time, she said finally, to think. Of course, but Sarah, Victor's voice softened. I know what it's like to want revenge, to let it consume you. Don't make my mistake. Don't let it turn you into something you're not. Jace was waiting outside with the wagon, his face tight with worry. Sarah climbed up beside him, still shaking. She told him everything. The confrontation with McLean, Victor's rescue, The revelation about Thomas. "Do you believe him?" Jace asked when she finished. "I don't know." Sarah pulled the bundle of letters from her bodice. "But maybe these will tell us." They drove back to town in silence, the letters between them like a loaded gun. Back in her boarding house room, Sarah lit every lamp she had and spread the letters across her bed. Jace stood guard at the door. There were 17 letters total, some from McLean to an unnamed recipient, some from the unnamed recipient to McLean, all written in careful code numbers and phrases that meant nothing at first glance. But Sarah had grown up helping the Mission Sisters with their accounts. She understood patterns recognized when numbers didn't add up to simple business transactions. It took 3 hours, but slowly the code revealed itself. Payment schedules, delivery dates, instructions for eliminating obstacles. And there in the 11th letter, the courier Morrison must not reach Phoenix. Eliminate and retrieve documents. Payment upon confirmation. Signed with a single initial W. W, Sarah breathed. Governor Whitmore. Jace leaned over her shoulder. Keep going. The 14th letter was dated 2 weeks ago. Phase 2 approaching. Dalton elimination scheduled for end of month. Railway office attack will provide cover. Ensure no survivors to contradict official story. Sarah looked up at Jace. They're going to kill Victor. Make it look like he was killed during a raid. And blame him for the railway office attack. Wrap everything up clean. Jace's jaw tightened. We need to warn him. Why, he's an outlaw. He's robbed, stolen. He's a father who lost his son to corruption. Same corruption that killed your husband. Jace met her eyes. You heard Victor tonight. He wants justice, not chaos. Can you honestly say letting him die serves justice? Sarah looked down at the letters, at Daniel's handwriting in the letter Jace had given her. Don't let rage consume you. No, she said quietly. It doesn't. She gathered the letters carefully, tied them back together. Tomorrow, she said, we go to Victor. We show him everything. And then we finish what Daniel started. Jace's hand found hers, squeezed gently. Together. Sarah nodded. Her throat still ached from McLean's grip. Her hands still trembled with adrenaline. But for the first time in 6 months, she felt something other than rage. She felt purpose. Real purpose. The road ahead would be dangerous. There would be blood, betrayal, perhaps death. But she wouldn't walk it alone. She had Jace. Had Victor, unlikely as that alliance was. And she had Daniel's final wish to live fully, to choose love over hate. Revenge was a cold thing. Justice was something else entirely. And as Sarah Chen-Morrison lay down to sleep that night, the letters hidden safely under her mattress, she dreamed not of death but of dawn and of a future that might still hold light. Sarah woke to knocking. She jolted upright, hand reaching for the derringer under her pillow. The boarding house room was still dark dawn, barely a promise on the horizon. The knocking came again, soft, deliberate. Sarah, Jace's voice low and urgent, we have a problem. She threw on a robe, unlocked the door. Jace slipped inside, his face grim in the lamplight. McLean's gone, he said without preamble. Left town 2 hours ago, heading north. To the governor. That's my guess. And if he's running scared, he might accelerate the timeline. Jace ran a hand through his hair. We need to move, today. Sarah's mind sharpened, sleep falling away. Victor needs to see the letters. Agreed, but not at the ranch. Too exposed. Jace hesitated. There's a place, an old mission abandoned now, 10 miles south. Victor knows it. How do you know he'll come? I'll make sure he does. Jace's eyes met hers. Trust me. Sarah thought of everything that had led to this moment. The cemetery in Santa Fe, the gold-wrapped bullet, Daniel's dying breath, and this man, scarred, haunted, offering alliance when she'd expected nothing but obstacles. I trust you. The abandoned mission crouched in the desert like a penitent sinner. Adobe walls crumbling under time and weather. A cross still perched on the roof, tilted but defiant. The interior was cool and dark dust motes dancing in shafts of sunlight from holes in the ceiling. Sarah arrived first, the letters tucked inside her satchel. She wore men's clothing today, borrowed from Jace. Easier to ride, easier to move if things went wrong. Her hair tied back, her face bare of cosmetics. She looked like herself for the first time in weeks. Felt like herself. Jace arrived an hour later with Victor Dalton. The outlaw leader looked different in daylight. older, more weathered, the gray in his hair more prominent, but his eyes were still sharp, missing nothing as he surveyed the mission ruins. "Miss Morrison," he said using her real name. "Or should I call you Sarah?" "Sarah is fine." Victor nodded to Jace. "Your friend said you had information, evidence that concerns me." Sarah pulled the bundle of letters from her satchel. "I took these from your study, the locked drawer in your desk." Victor's eyebrows rose, but he didn't look angry. If anything, he seemed impressed. "So you're a thief as well as a dancer." "I'm a widow looking for truth." Sarah held out the letters. "These are between McLean and Governor Whitmore. They detail everything. The corruption ring, your son's execution, Daniel's assassination, and your planned elimination." Victor took the letters, his hand steady. He read in silence, his face growing darker with each page. When he finished, he looked up. His eyes burned with something terrible and pure. "McLean," he said softly, "working for Whitmore all along." "For at least a year," Jace confirmed. "Maybe longer, using your gang as cover for the governor's dirty work. And framing me for it when convenient." Victor's jaw tightened. "My son died because I couldn't see the truth, too blinded by rage to see the real enemy." Sarah stepping closer. "McLean killed Daniel, but he was following the governor's orders. If we want real justice, we take them both down." Victor met her eyes. "You want to help me do that?" "I want to finish what my husband started. Expose the corruption. Get justice for everyone they've destroyed." Sarah's voice didn't waver. "But I won't be party to mindless violence. We do this clean, legal. We get evidence to people who can use it." "Judge Blackwood," Jace said. "He's been building a case against Whitmore for 2 years. These letters, plus testimony, plus the original documents Daniel was carrying." Victor folded the letters carefully. If McLean kept them as insurance, they will be hidden somewhere safe, somewhere he could access quickly if needed. His room at the ranch. Too obvious. McLean's paranoid. He'd hide them somewhere he could get to, but no one else would think to look. Victor paused. "There's a line shack, 20 miles northwest. We use it as a way station during jobs. McLean insisted on making improvements there. New floorboards, new roof. I thought he was just being thorough." Sarah and Jace exchanged glances. "Hidden compartment," Sarah said. "Most likely." Victor stood. "We ride out tonight, get those documents, then we take everything to Judge Blackwood." "What about your gang?" Jace asked. "The loyal ones. They'll follow you into a fight if you ask." "No," Victor's voice was firm. "No more bloodshed on my account. I'll go alone, but you won't make it past the ranch without being seen," Sarah pointed out. "McLean has allies there, men he's paid better than you ever could." "Then what do you suggest?" Sarah felt a plan forming, dangerous and precise. "McLean thinks he's won, that I'm dead or scared off, that you're isolated and vulnerable. We use that." She outlined the strategy. Victor would return to the ranch business as usual, make no indication he suspected anything. Meanwhile, Sarah would slip into the line shack under cover of darkness. "Too risky," Jace said immediately. "If you're caught, I won't be." Sarah's voice carried a conviction she didn't entirely feel. "I'm small, fast, and I know how to move quietly. Daniel taught me." Victor studied her for a long moment. "You're brave or foolish. I'm not sure which." "Both, probably." Sarah managed a tight smile. "But I'm also the only one who has a chance. Jace can't go. The ranch hands know his face. And you need to maintain your cover." "She's right," Victor said reluctantly. "But we need contingencies. If something goes wrong..." "If something goes wrong," Jace interrupted, "I'll be watching from the ridge, armed and ready." They finalized the details. Timing signals, escape routes. It felt surreal planning a covert operation with an outlaw and an ex-gang member. But it also felt right. For the first time, Sarah understood what Daniel must have felt. The weight of doing something that mattered, even if it cost everything. Before they parted, Victor caught Sarah's arm. "I need you to understand something," he said quietly. "If this goes sideways, if they catch you, they can't save you twice. McLean's friends won't be as forgiving as I was." "I know. And yet you're willing to risk it. For a husband who's been dead 6 months." Sarah met his eyes. "For a husband who deserves justice. For your son who deserved better. For everyone the governor has crushed under his corruption." She paused. and maybe for myself, to prove I'm more than just rage and grief." Victor's expression softened. Daniel Morrison was a lucky man. "No," Sarah said. "He was a good man. There's a difference." Time. Night fell like a curtain across the desert. Sarah rode a borrowed horse dressed in dark clothes, her hair tucked under a hat. She looked like a ranch hand, forgettable and plain. Jace had taught her the route to the line shack, made her repeat it until she could navigate by starlight alone. 20 miles felt like 200. The line shack appeared just after midnight, a dark shape against darker sky. Sarah tethered her horse a quarter-mile away and approached on foot. No lights, no smoke from the chimney. The place looked abandoned. She circled the structure, once checking for guards or watchers. Nothing. Either McLean was truly confident in his secrecy, or this was a trap. Only one way to find out. The door was locked, but Sarah had Jace's lockpicks. 30 seconds and she was inside, closing the door behind her with barely a sound. The interior smelled of dust and mice. Moonlight through the single window provided dim illumination. She could make out a table, a chair, a bedroll in the corner, and their new floorboards, just as Victor had described. Sarah knelt, running her hands over the wood. One board sounded different, hollow. She wedged her knife into the gap and pried. The board came up with a soft creak, underneath a metal box. Sarah's heart hammered as she lifted it out. The lock was more sophisticated than the doors. She worked carefully, sweat beading on her forehead, despite the cool night air. Click, inside the box, documents. Dozens of them. Financial records, deeds, correspondence. And there, bound with a ribbon, Daniel's papers. She recognized his handwriting on the cover sheet. Evidence package for Judge Thaddeus Blackwood. Re-territorial corruption and land fraud investigation. Sarah's vision blurred. These papers had cost Daniel his life, and here they were, hidden away like dirty secrets. She was reaching for them when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses approaching fast. Trap. This was a trap. Sarah shoved the documents back in the box, slammed the floorboard down, and ran for the door. Too late. It burst open. McLean stood there, his shoulder bandaged, but his gun hand steady. Behind him, 3 men, ranch hands loyal to him, not Victor. "Well, well," McLean said. The little bird flew right into the cage. Sarah's hand went to her gun, but McLean was faster. His bullet tore the Derringer from her grip, sent it skittering across the floor. "Don't," he warned. "I'd prefer to talk before I kill you." Sarah backed up, her mind racing. Jace was on the ridge, but too far away to help. She was alone. "How did you know?" she asked, buying time. "I didn't, but I know Victor. Knew he'd send someone to check my hidey hole once he figured things out." McLean stepped into the shack, his men flanking him. "Didn't expect it to be you, though. Thought maybe Jace. This is better." "Better how?" "Because when I deliver your body to the governor, he'll know I've cleaned up all the loose ends." McLean's smile was cold. "Your husband and you, Dalton, all tied up neat. Victor knows everything. The letters, the evidence, all of it." "Does he now?" McLean didn't look concerned. "Shame he won't live to share that knowledge." "My boys are at the ranch right now taking care of him." Sarah's blood went cold. "You're lying." "Am I Victor's soft, sentimental, easy to get close to when you're one of his trusted men?" McLean gestured to his companions. "These boys have been loyal to me for years, paid in governor's gold. They'll do whatever I say." One of the men grabbed Sarah's arms, twisted them behind her back. She fought, but he was twice her size. "Here's what's going to happen," McLean said conversationally. "You're going to tell me exactly what evidence you found and who you've told. Then you're going to dumb. Quick if you cooperate, slow if you don't." Sarah spat at him. McLean wiped his face calmly. "Slow it is." He raised his gun. The window exploded in a shower of glass. Jace came through, firing his rifle, taking down one of McLean's men before he hit to the ground, rolling. The shack erupted into chaos. Sarah twisted in her captor's grip, drove her heel down on his instep. He howled, loosened his hold. She broke free, dubbed for her Derringer. Gunshots cracked like thunder. Wood splintered. Someone screamed. Sarah came up shooting, dropped McLean's second man with a bullet to the leg. Jace was grappling with a third, both of them fighting for control of the rifle. McLean had taken cover behind the table, returning fire. "Go," Jace shouted. Get the documents and go. Sarah hesitated for a heartbeat. Then she grabbed the metal box from under the floorboard and ran. Behind her, more gunshots. A cry of pain, Jace or one of McLean's men, she couldn't tell. She burst out of the shack into the night, the box clutched to her chest. Her horse was too far. She ran for the rocks for any cover. McLean appeared in the doorway behind her. Stop! Sarah kept running. His bullet kicked up dust 3 feet to her left. A warning shot. Next one goes through your spine. Sarah dove behind a boulder, gasping. The box dug into her ribs. She could hear McLean approaching, his footsteps deliberate. Then another sound. Hoofbeats. Lots of them. Victor Dalton rode out of the darkness like vengeance incarnate, 4 men with him. Not McLean's bought loyalty, these were the old guard. Men who'd followed Victor from the beginning. McLean, Victor's voice carried across the night. It's over, McLean fired at Victor. Missed. Victor's men returned fire, pinning McLean against the shack. In the confusion, Sarah ran back to the shack. Jace was on the floor, bleeding from a shoulder wound, but alive. She helped him up, got him outside. The standoff was brief. McLean was outnumbered and knew it. He threw down his gun, hands raised. You're making a mistake, he told Victor. The governor, Victor interrupted, is about to have much bigger problems. He gestured to Sarah. Show him. Sarah opened the metal box, pulled out Daniel's evidence package. Let McLean see it in the moonlight. The color drained from his face. We're riding to Phoenix, Victor said, to Judge Blackwood, and you're coming with us as evidence. They made camp 10 miles north, too exhausted to ride through the night. Jace's wound was superficial. The bullet had grazed his shoulder. Nothing vital hit. Sarah cleaned and bandaged it with supplies from Victor's saddlebag, her hands steady despite her shaking heart. You came back, she said quietly. You were supposed to stay on the ridge. And let you get killed, not likely. Jace winced as she tied off the bandage. Besides, I thought we were partners. Partners don't take bullets for each other. Good partners do. Sarah met his eyes. In the firelight, they looked almost silver. This man who'd started as a stranger, then a suspect, then an ally. Now something more. Something she wasn't ready to name. Thank you, she whispered. Jace's hand came up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was gentle, tentative. Sarah, don't. She pulled back, not harshly but firmly. I can't, not yet. Daniel has been gone 6 months, Jace said softly. I'm not asking you to forget him. Just consider that you're allowed to live, to feel something again. I feel plenty, rage, grief, determination. What about hope? Sarah looked away. I don't know if I remember how. Jace was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, moved back to his bedroll. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here. Sarah sat by the fire alone, Daniel's papers in her lap. She should feel triumphant. They had the evidence, had McLean in custody, were one step closer to justice. But all she felt was hollow. Across the camp, Victor was interrogating McLean. The outlaw's voice carried on the desert wind. Tell me about Thomas. Tell me how you framed my boy. McLean sullen. I didn't frame him. Governor's nephew did the killing. I just made sure the evidence pointed the wrong way. And for that, they paid you. Paid me well, enough to set myself up proper. Enough to sleep at night, knowing an innocent boy died. Silence. Then McLean quieter. He wasn't the first innocent, won't be the last. That's how the world works. Not my world, not anymore. Victor's voice went hard. Tomorrow we ride to Phoenix. You testify against the governor every detail. In exchange, I won't put a bullet in your skull tonight. The governor won't let me testify. He has reach. Then we'll make sure Judge Blackwood protects you. United States Marshal protection. Witness protection. Victor paused. You're a rat, McLean. Rats survive by turning, so turn. Sarah listened to this exchange, her emotions tangled. McLean had killed Daniel, had left him bleeding in the dirt. She should want him dead, should demand it. But Daniel's letter echoed in her mind. Don't let rage consume you. She rose, walked to where Victor sat guarding the prisoner. I want to talk to him, she said. Victor looked surprised but nodded. 5 minutes. Sarah crouched in front of McLean. The man who'd murdered her husband looked smaller, somehow diminished by capture and fear. Why? She asked simply. McLean met her eyes. Money. That's it, just money. What else is there? McLean laughed bitterly. Love, honor, those don't put food on the table, don't buy respect. My husband had honor, and it got him killed. Your husband was a fool, carrying evidence for a judge who can't touch the governor. Dying for nothing. Sarah's hand moved to her gun. Victor tensed, ready to intervene. But Sarah didn't draw. Instead, she leaned closer to McLean. Daniel didn't die for nothing. He died believing truth mattered, that justice mattered. And because of him, you're going to help bring down the most corrupt governor this territory has ever seen. Her voice was steady, cold. So maybe the fool was you. She stood, walked back to the fire. Behind her, McLean said nothing. They reached Phoenix 3 days later. The territorial capital sprawled across the valley, larger and grander than Tucson. Brick buildings competed with adobe, streets wide enough for wagon traffic. And there on a hill overlooking it all, the courthouse, Judge Thaddeus Blackwood's courthouse. Victor sent a rider ahead to arrange a meeting. They waited in a small hotel, McLean under constant guard. Sarah used the time to organize the evidence, Daniel's documents, the letters between McLean and the governor, witness statements Victor had gathered over 2 years. It was overwhelming, enough to bring down not just the governor, but half his administration. This will change things, Jace said, watching her work. Not just for us, for the whole territory. It has to. Sarah's fingers trembled slightly as she shuffled papers. Too many people have died for this. That afternoon, Judge Blackwood agreed to see them. He was a stern man in his 60s with white mutton chops and eyes that had seen too much injustice. His chambers were lined with law books, his desk covered in case files. Victor Dalton, he said when they entered, I've been trying to arrest you for 5 years. And yet here I am walking in voluntarily. Victor placed the evidence box on the judge's desk, with enough evidence to give you the governor. Blackwood's eyebrows rose. He opened the box, began reading. The silence stretched, broken only by the rustle of papers and the judge's occasional sharp intake of breath. Finally, Blackwood looked up. Where did you get this? Sarah stepped forward. My husband, Daniel Morrison, was carrying it when he was murdered, 6 months ago on the road to Phoenix. McLean, acting on Governor Whitmore's orders, killed him and took the evidence. And you are Sarah Chen-Morrison, Daniel's widow. Something in Blackwood's expression softened. I remember Daniel. He was helping me build this case, one of the few honest men I knew. He looked at the papers again. He died for this. Yes, sir. And you've spent 6 months tracking his killers. Yes, sir. Blackwood leaned back in his chair. You know what this means, don't you? If we move on the governor with this evidence, it will tear the territorial government apart. Trials, investigations, political chaos. Justice isn't clean, Victor said, but it's necessary. Indeed. Blackwood's gaze moved to Victor. And you? You are willing to testify, to implicate yourself in robbery, theft, and other crimes. I am, in exchange for consideration on sentencing and a guarantee that my men, the ones not involved in the governor's schemes, receive fair treatment. I can arrange that. Blackwood turned to McLean, who'd been sitting silently. And you're the killer. McLean swallowed. I want immunity, full immunity in exchange for testimony. Absolutely not, Sarah said sharply. He murdered my husband in cold blood. He did, Blackwood agreed. But without his testimony, the governor might wiggle free. His lawyers are the best in the territory. He looked at Sarah. I understand your rage, but would you rather have vengeance or justice? Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed to demand McLean's head, to watch him hang the way Thomas Dalton had hanged. But Daniel's voice whispered in her mind, don't let rage consume you. Reduce charges, she said finally, not immunity. He serves time for Daniel's murder, but reduced from murder to manslaughter in exchange for his testimony. Blackwood looked at McLean. That's as good as you'll get. McLean nodded slowly. I'll take it. Good. Blackwood began organizing the evidence. I'll need statements from all of you. Depositions, sworn testimony. This needs to be ironclad. They spent the next 3 days in the courthouse telling their stories. Sarah recounted finding Daniel's body, the 6-month hunt for his killers. Jace described his time in the Dalton gang and his reasons for leaving. Victor laid out the corruption that had killed his son. And McLean, under oath and with trembling hands, detailed every crime the governor had ordered. On the fourth day, federal marshals arrested Governor Whitmore. The news spread through Phoenix like wildfire. Crowds gathered at the courthouse. Some demanded the governor's head. Others claimed conspiracy false accusations. But Judge Blackwood held firm. The evidence was public record now, irrefutable. Sarah watched the governor's arrest from the courthouse steps. The man looked small in shackles. His expensive suit rumpled his face pale. He caught her eye for just a moment, and she saw something there. Not remorse, fear. Good, she thought. Let him be afraid. The trial took 6 weeks. Sarah stayed in Phoenix for all of it, watching from the gallery as witness after witness took the stand. Ranchers whose land had been stolen, homesteaders defrauded, families destroyed by the governor's greed. And in the center of it all, McLean's testimony. Detailed, damning, impossible to refute. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, found the governor guilty on all counts, sentenced life in territorial prison. When the verdict was read, Sarah felt something break loose in her chest. Not joy, not satisfaction, just release. The weight she'd carried for 6 months, the burning need for revenge, suddenly lifted. She walked out of the courthouse into the Phoenix sunshine and let herself cry. For Daniel, for Thomas, for Emily Reeves and every other innocent the corruption had destroyed. Jace found her on the courthouse steps, sat beside her without a word. His presence was solid, steady, comforting. "It's done," she said when she could speak again. "It's done," he agreed. "I thought I'd feel different, triumphant or vindicated or something. Justice doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it just feels necessary." Sarah wiped her eyes, looked at him. "What happens now?" "For you, I mean." Jace shrugged. "I've been thinking about that. The saloon in Tucson is doing well. I could expand it, make it something respectable. Just a saloon owner. Nothing more. I'm trying to go straight, remember." But there was something in his eyes, a question he wasn't asking aloud. Sarah looked away. "Jace, you're not ready, I know." He stood, offered his hand to help her up. "But Sarah, when you are married, if you are, I'll still be here." Their hands remained clasped for a moment longer than necessary. Sarah felt the calluses on his palm, the warmth of his skin, felt something stir in her chest that wasn't grief or rage. Hope, maybe, fragile and new. She let go slowly. "I should visit Daniel's grave in Santa Fe. Tell him it's over. Want company for the ride?" "No, this is something I need to do alone." Jace nodded, understanding. "Then I'll see you in Tucson, whenever you're ready." He walked away, and Sarah watched him go, tall and scarred and carrying his own grief with quiet dignity. "He's been gone 6 months, Sarah. You're allowed to live." Maybe she was. But first she had to say goodbye. Santa Fe looked the same as when she'd left. The cemetery, the cross, the grave that held Daniel's body, but not his spirit. Sarah knelt in the dust, placed fresh flowers at the base of the cross. White roses, his favorite. "I did it," she said softly. "The governor's in prison. McLean's serving time for your murder. And the evidence you died protecting, it's public now. Everyone knows the truth." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage. "I'm sorry it took so long. Sorry I spent so much time on revenge instead of living." Her voice cracked. "But I think you'd be proud. We got justice. Real justice." She pulled out his last letter, the one Jace had given her. Read it again in the fading light. "Don't let rage consume you. You have so much love to give. Live the life we dreamed about." "I want to," Sarah whispered. "I want to live again, but I don't know how to let you go." A memory surfaced. Their wedding night. Daniel sitting on the edge of their bed, taking her hands. "Promise me something," he'd said. "If anything ever happens to me, promise you won't stop living. You have too much light in you, Sarah. Too much love. Don't let it die with me." "Nothing's going to happen to you, Sri. Promise anyway." She'd promised, and she'd broken that promise for 6 months, letting rage and grief consume her. But not anymore. Sarah pulled her wedding ring from her finger, the gold band Daniel had placed there a year ago. She kissed it once, then placed it on the grave. "I'll always love you," she said, "but I need to let you go now, need to find out who I am without you." Tears ran down her face. Be at peace, Daniel, and forgive me for taking so long to give you justice. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in oranges and purples and reds. Beautiful and terrible like everything in this harsh land. Sarah stood, brushed the dust from her knees, took one last look at the grave. Then she turned and walked toward the future. Tucson welcomed her back with familiar noise and dust. The Red Canyon Saloon looked the same, but Sarah saw it with new eyes now. Not as a hunting ground, but as, what home wasn't the right word. Not yet, but something close. Jace was behind the bar when she walked in, polishing glasses. He looked up and his face transformed. Not quite a smile, but something warm and genuine. You came back. I did. How was Santa Fe? Necessary. Sarah approached the bar, her heart beating faster. I said goodbye. Really goodbye this time. Jace set down his glass carefully. How do you feel? Lighter, sadder, but lighter. She took a breath. Jace, I've been thinking about what you said, about being allowed to live. Sarah, you don't have to. I want to. The words came out firm, clear. I want to try, to live instead of just surviving, to build something instead of tearing things down. What did you have in mind? Sarah looked around the saloon. At the worn floors and chipped bar, at the stage where she danced in disguise, at the storage room where they'd formed their unlikely alliance. You said you wanted to expand, make this place respectable. I did. What if we did it together, made this a place that meant something? Not just a saloon, but she struggled to articulate the vision forming in her mind. A place where people who've lost things can find community, where orphans and widows and people starting over can gather. Jace was quiet, considering. That's ambitious. I know, but I have money saved. And I know how to run a business the Mission Sisters taught me, accounting management. I can dance, teach dance even. We could offer music lessons, reading lessons, be more than just whiskey and cards. We, Jace repeated softly. Partners. Partners, if you'll have me. Jace came around the bar, stood in front of her, close but not touching. Sarah, I need you to understand something. I'm not Daniel. I'm not going to try to be. I'm a former outlaw with a scarred face and a past I'm not proud of. I know who you are, and you still want to do this, build something with me. Sarah met his eyes, saw the vulnerability there, the fear of rejection, saw also the strength, the honor beneath the rough exterior. I don't want Daniel back. She searched for the right words. I want to build a future with someone who understands what it means to start over. Someone who's seen the worst and still believes in better. I believe in you, Jace said quietly. Sarah's breath caught. Give me time. I can't. I'm not ready for everything yet, but I want to try it. Is that enough? It's more than enough. Jace smiled, then really smiled, and it transformed his entire face. So, partners. He extended his hand. Sarah took it, and the contact sent warmth spreading through her chest. Partners, she agreed. They shook on it, formal and serious. Then Jace pulled her into a hug, careful and gentle. Sarah let herself lean into his solid warmth, let herself accept comfort without guilt. For the first time in 6 months, the future didn't feel like a curse. It felt like possibility. They had work to do, a saloon to transform, a community to build. And somewhere out there, Victor Dalton was serving his sentence, paying his debt to society. McLean was in another prison, facing his own reckoning. Justice imperfect, but real, had been served. And Sarah Chen-Morrison, widow and dancer, an unlikely hero, was finally ready to live. 3 months passed like water through fingers. The Red Canyon Saloon transformed under Sarah and Jace's partnership. They renamed it Emily's Rest after Jace's sister. The sign above the door now featured a painted rose, delicate and hopeful. Inside, they'd cleared half the space for something new. A schoolroom of sorts, tables where children could practice letters. A corner with instruments, a battered piano, 2 guitars, a violin with 1 broken string, and on the far wall, mirrors for dance practice. Sarah taught 3 afternoons a week. Chinese fan dancing, Spanish flamenco, even some ballet for the older girls. The students were an eclectic mix, Mexican children from the edge of town, Chinese kids from the small immigrant community, a few Apache girls whose families had settled nearby. Word spread, the strange saloon that offered lessons instead of just liquor, the widow who danced with ghosts and taught hope. Business at the bar side actually increased. Men came to drink, stayed to watch their daughters learn something beautiful. Mothers dropped off children and sometimes stayed themselves learning to read or cipher numbers in the back corner. It wasn't the life Sarah had planned with Daniel, but it was a life, a good one. Still at night, when the saloon closed and silence settled, Sarah sometimes walked through the empty schoolroom and felt Daniel's absence like a physical ache. Healing wasn't linear. Grief had a way of sneaking up when she least expected it. Jace understood, never pushed, just remained present, solid, patient. They hadn't kissed, hadn't crossed that line. But sometimes late at night when they were cleaning up, their hands would brush. Or Jace would tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering just a moment. Small things, building blocks of something neither of them quite named yet. Then on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn, a rider came. Sarah was teaching a group of girls the basic steps of a waltz when the saloon doors burst open. The rider was covered in dust, his horse lathered from hard travel. "Need to speak to Miss Morrison," he gasped. "Urgent message from Phoenix." Sarah's stomach dropped. She dismissed her students gently, then followed the rider to where Jace was wiping down the bar. The message was from Judge Blackwood. Short, precise, devastating. "McLean escaped federal custody 3 days ago. Believed heading your direction. Consider yourself warned. Marshals en route, but may not arrive in time." Sarah's hands shook. She read the message twice, hoping the words would change. They didn't. "He's coming for us," she said quietly. Jace took the message, his jaw tightening as he read. "Maybe not. He could run to Mexico, start over. No, he blames us for his imprisonment, for turning him." Sarah looked up, met Jace's eyes. "He's coming for revenge. Then we'll be ready. Jace, he's a killer, a professional. We can't." "We can." Jace's voice was steel. "We've survived worse, and this time we know he's coming." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to run, but running was what the old Sarah would have done. The Sarah consumed by fear and rage. This Sarah had built something, had people depending on her, 12 students who needed their teacher, a community that had started to trust her. "We fortify," she said. "Secure the saloon, warn the neighbors, arm ourselves. And send word to Victor," Jace added. "He's out on parole now, working at a ranch outside Phoenix. He'd want to know." They spent the afternoon preparing. Jace nailed shutters over windows. Sarah moved the children's supplies upstairs out of potential crossfire. They cached weapons, rifles, pistols, ammunition in strategic locations. The school children's parents came for their kids, worried and grateful for the warning. Within 2 hours, the saloon was empty, except for Sarah and Jace. And then the waiting. Night fell. They took turns on watch, 2 hours each. Sarah had the midnight shift. She sat in the darkened saloon, a rifle across her lap, listening to every creak and whisper of the desert night. At 2 in the morning, she heard hoofbeats. 3 riders, moving slowly, cautiously. Sarah's heart hammered. She moved to wake Jace, but he was already up, rifle in hand. They'd been partners long enough now to move in sync, wordless communication. The riders stopped outside. Silence stretched. Then a voice called out, familiar and cold. "Sarah Morrison, I know you're in there. McLean, come out and we can settle this clean." "Just you and me." Sarah looked at Jace. He shook his head violently. "Don't." "Why should I trust you?" she called back. "Because if you don't, I'll burn this place to the ground with you inside." McLean's voice carried fury, barely contained. "You ruined my life, took everything from me. You ruined your own life the moment you murdered my husband. That courier was a means to an end. Just business." "His name was Daniel," Sarah's voice cracked. "He was a person, not a means." Silence, then McLean laughed, harsh and bitter. "You really think you're better than me, that your revenge was somehow noble?" The words hit harder than Sarah expected, because he was right in a way. She'd spent 6 months hunting him, planning violence, consumed by the same darkness that drove him. The only difference was she'd chosen to stop. "I'm not better than you," Sarah called, "but I'm trying to be. That's the difference." Touching. "Now come out or I start shooting." A rifle shot cracked. The saloon's front window exploded. Jace returned fire, his bullets sparking off stone outside. The riders scattered, taking cover. The siege had begun. They held out through the night. McLean and his two companions kept the saloon pinned, firing sporadically, probing for weak points. Sarah and Jace moved from window to window, conserving ammunition, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. As dawn broke, McLean tried a new tactic. "Morrison, I've got a proposition." Sarah didn't answer. "The federal marshals are coming. We both know that they catch me, I hang for sure." McLean's voice carried a manic edge now. "So here's my offer. You come out, face me fair, and I let the bartender live. Otherwise, we're all dying together." "Don't even consider it," Jace said from his position by the back door. Sarah's mind raced. Marshals were coming, but from Phoenix, 2, maybe 3 days out. Could they hold that long movement outside? Caught her eye. One of McLean's men was trying to circle around to the back. "Jace, back door." Jace spun, fired through the door. A scream. The man fell back. "You're just delaying the inevitable," McLean shouted. "I've got time, got ammunition, got nothing to lose." He was right. They were trapped. And if McLean decided to just wait them out, hoofbeats, new ones, coming fast from the north. Sarah risked a look through a crack in the shutters, a single rider pushing his horse hard. Even from a distance, she recognized the bearing, the gray hair. Victor Dalton had come. "McLean," Victor's voice carried across the desert. "Stand down." McLean's laugh was almost hysterical. "The ghost of my past come to save your new friends. Come to stop you from making this worse." Victor reined in his horse 50 yards out. "You escape federal custody, you're already facing the gallows. Add murder to that and there's no judge in the territory who won't hang you. I'm a dead man anyway." "Maybe, but do you want to die a mad dog, or do you want to dick with some shred of dignity?" Victor's voice softened. "I know what rage feels like, McLean. Knew it when they hanged my son. Let it consume me for years, but this," he gestured at the saloon, "this isn't justice, it's just pain spreading itself around. You think I care about dignity? I think part of you still remembers being a man instead of a monster." Silence, long and tense. Then McLean stepped out from a cupboard, his gun pointed at Victor. "You're a fool old man, coming here alone." "Not alone." More riders appeared, 6 of them wearing federal marshal badges. They'd been following Victor, using him as bait. McLean saw them. For a moment, Sarah saw the calculation in his eyes. The weighing of options, fight and buy him or surrender and hang. He chose poorly. McLean's gun swung toward the marshals. Multiple rifles fired at once. McLean jerked, stumbled, fell. His gun clattered away across the dirt. His 2 companions threw down their weapons immediately, hands raised. Sarah burst out of the saloon, Jace right behind her. She ran to where McLean lay bleeding in the dust. The marshals reached him first, but they stepped back when they saw Sarah. McLean was dying. She could see it in the blood soaking his shirt, the shallow rasp of his breathing. "Sarah," he whispered, "I'm sorry about your husband. I, oh, I didn't want to." "Then why did you?" "Money, fear, stupidity." Blood bubbled on his lips. "Tell Judge Blackwood. Tell him the governor's nephew. He's the one who really killed that Dalton boy. Made me frame the wrong kid. Evidence is under the floorboards at my old ranch." His eyes fixed on something beyond Sarah's shoulder. Something she couldn't see. "Emily," he whispered, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you." Then he was gone. Sarah stood slowly, her hands bloody from where she'd pressed against his wounds. Too late. Always too late. Jace's arm came around her shoulders, steady and warm. "It's over," he said quietly. "Is it?" Sarah looked at the body at the marshals securing McLean's companions at Victor, sitting on his horse with the weight of decades on his face. "Or does it just keep going, pain and revenge, and more pain?" "It goes on," Victor said, dismounting. "But we choose whether to add to it or try to heal it." He looked at Sarah. "You chose healing, building that school, teaching those kids. That matters more than any revenge." One of the marshals approached, a tall man with kind eyes. "Miss Morrison, Judge Blackwood sent word. Asked me to tell you that McLean's last testimony helped close several cases, including new evidence about Thomas Dalton's hanging." Victor went very still. "What kind of evidence?" The kind that proves your son was innocent, and the kind that puts Governor Whitmore's nephew in a federal prison for the rest of his life. The marshal pulled out a document. Judge Blackwood also wanted you to have this. It's an official pardon and exoneration for Thomas Dalton. Posthumous but legal. Victor took the document with shaking hands, stared at it like it might disappear. My son, he whispered. After all these years, his name is clear. Sarah saw tears on the old outlaw's face, saw a father finally receiving the justice he'd sought through so much blood and pain. I'm sorry it took so long, the marshal said gently. Better late than never. Victor folded the document carefully. Thank you, truly. The marshals took McLean's body, arrested his companions, and prepared to ride out. But before they left, the lead marshal approached Sarah again. Judge Blackwood wanted me to give you this too. It was a letter. Sarah opened it with trembling fingers. Dear Mrs. Morrison, your husband's sacrifice has resulted in the conviction of 12 territorial officials, the recovery of $2 million in stolen land and funds, and the restoration of justice to countless families. His evidence was the keystone that brought down the most corrupt administration in our territory's history. I wanted you to know Daniel Morrison died a hero, and his legacy will echo for generations. Judge Thaddeus Blackwood. Sarah's vision blurred. She read the letter twice, 3 times. Then she pressed it to her chest and let herself cry. Not for revenge, not for rage, just for grief, pure and simple and necessary. Jace held her while she wept. Victor stood nearby, silent guard. The marshals gave them privacy, and when Sarah's tears finally stopped, she felt something shift inside her chest, the last chain of anger and pain finally breaking. He mattered, she whispered. Daniel mattered. He did, Jace agreed. And so do you. So they buried McLean in the town cemetery, unmarked grave in the corner. Victor paid for it, saying every man deserved at least that much dignity in death. The town slowly returned to normal. Shutters came down. Children returned to their lessons. Emily's Rest opened its doors again. But Sarah found herself restless. The confrontation with McLean had shaken something loose in her, made her realize she'd been living in a kind of limbo, neither fully grieving nor fully healing. 2 weeks after McLean's death, she made a decision. I need to go to Santa Fe, she told Jace one evening after closing. Need to bring Daniel home. Jace looked up from the ledger he was reviewing. Bring him home. His grave is there, but his body. I want to move him here, to Tucson, where I am, where I'm building a life. Sarah's voice was steady. Is that selfish, wanting him close? It's not selfish, it's human. Jace set down his pen. Want company? No, this is something I need to do alone. She hesitated. But when I come back, when I'm ready, maybe we could talk about us. Something flickered in Jace's eyes. Hope carefully guarded. I'd like that. I care about you. I need you to know that. But I also need to put Daniel to rest properly before I can... She struggled for words. Before you can move forward, Jace finished gently. I understand. I'll be here when you get back. Sarah kissed his cheek, impulsive and quick. Then she left before she could lose her nerve. The trip to Santa Fe took 4 days. Sarah made the journey alone, needing the silence and space to think. The desert had a way of stripping everything down to essentials. Out here, with nothing but sun and sand and sky, pretense fell away. She'd been running for 6 months, running toward revenge, then toward justice, then toward building something new. But always running, never stopping to actually feel. Now riding through the familiar landscape, she let herself remember. Daniel teaching her to shoot, his patient hands guiding hers. Daniel reading to her by lamplight, his voice making the words come alive. Daniel holding her during thunderstorms, whispering that she was safe. Daniel dying in her arms, his last words and apologies she never understood. She'd been angry at him for dying. Realized that now. Angry that he'd taken the courier job knowing it was dangerous. Angry that he'd left her alone. But he'd been trying to do good, trying to make the territory better. And he'd succeeded, even if it cost him everything. I forgive you, Sarah whispered to the wind. For dying, for leaving, I forgive you. The words felt like releasing a breath she'd been holding for months. The mission sisters welcomed her back with gentle kindness. Sister Maria, who'd raised her after her parents died, took one look at Sarah's face and pulled her into a warm embrace. "Child, you've been through fire." "I have." Sarah held on tightly, "but I think I'm finally coming out the other side." She explained what she needed. The sisters helped arrange everything: the exhumation, the new casket for transport, the permits, and paperwork. It took 3 days. Sarah spent them walking the mission grounds, remembering her childhood here. The garden where she'd learned to tend plants, the chapel where she'd learned to pray, the classroom where Sister Catherine had taught her numbers and letters. This place had saved her once, given her structure when her world fell apart. Maybe she could do the same for the children in Tucson, create a place of safety and learning and hope. On the fourth day, Daniel's casket was loaded onto a wagon. Sarah drove it herself, unwilling to trust anyone else with this final journey. But she wasn't alone. Sister Maria rode with her, providing silent companionship. "Tell me about this bartender," Sister Maria said on the second day of travel. "This Jace," Sarah smiled despite herself. "How did you know about Child, I raised you. I know what hope looks like on your face," so Sarah told her. About Jace's scars and his sister and his quiet strength. About building the saloon school together. About not being ready, but wanting to be. Sister Maria listened, nodding occasionally. When Sarah finished, the old nun was quiet for a long moment. "Do you think you're betraying Daniel by caring for someone else?" The question hit like an arrow to the heart. "Yes, sometimes." "And do you think Daniel would want you to spend your life alone grieving?" Sarah thought of his last letter. "Live the life we dreamed about." "No, he'd want me to be happy." "Then be happy, child. Love isn't limited. You can love Daniel's memory and still love someone new. They don't cancel each other out." "It feels like they do." "I know, but feelings aren't facts." Sister Maria patted Sarah's hand. "You're allowed to have a future. Daniel would want that for most of you." They buried Daniel in Tucson's cemetery 3 days later in a plot Sarah had purchased on a small hill overlooking the town. The headstone was simple but beautiful, carved with both English and Chinese characters. Daniel Morrison, beloved husband, 1859 to 1883. He died for truth. The funeral was small. Jace came standing respectfully at a distance. Victor rode down from Phoenix, his hat in his hands. A few of Sarah's students and their parents. Sister Maria. Sarah spoke the words she'd been holding inside. "Daniel, I brought you home. Not to Santa Fe, where you died in my arms, but to Tucson, where I'm learning to live again." Her voice was steady now, certain. "You'll always be my first love, the man who taught me courage and kindness. But I'm ready now, ready to let you rest, ready to forgive myself for surviving when you didn't." She placed white roses on the grave. Then she stepped back, letting the others pay their respects. Jace approached last. He stood at the grave for a long moment, then spoke quietly, words meant only for Daniel. "I'll take care of her, I promise. Not because she needs taking care of, but because she deserves someone who sees how strong she is, how brave. I'll do my best to be worthy of that." Sarah's throat tightened. She hadn't known he'd heard her wishes, but somehow he'd understood. When everyone else had left, Sarah remained. The sun was setting, painting the sky in those familiar oranges and purples. "Goodbye, Daniel," she whispered. "Thank you for teaching me to fight, but more, thank you for teaching me when to stop fighting. I'll live enough for both of us, I promise." The wind picked up, warm and gentle. Sarah imagined it was Daniel's hand on her cheek, one last touch. Then she turned and walked down the hill toward the future. Jace was waiting at the cemetery gate. Sarah walked straight to him, no hesitation. "I'm ready," she said simply. "For everything, us, building a life, being happy." She took his hand. "If you'll still have me." Jace's smile was slow, warm, transforming his scarred face into something beautiful. "Always," he said. He kissed her then, gentle and sure. And Sarah kissed him back, tasting salt from her tears and something else. Something that felt like hope. When they finally pulled apart, Sarah laughed. Actually laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "What?" Jace asked, smiling. "I just realized I'm happy. Genuinely, honestly happy." She shook her head in wonder. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this again." "You deserve it. So do you." They walked back to town hand in hand, the future spreading before them. 6 months later, Emily's Rest hosted its first official recital. The saloon, now much more school than drinking establishment, was packed. Proud parents filled the seats. Students buzzed with nervous energy backstage. Sarah stood in the wings watching Jace welcome everyone. He'd grown into his role as co-founder, no longer hiding behind the bar, but standing proud in front of the community they'd built. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying easily across the room, "welcome to Emily's Rest. A year ago, this was just a saloon. But thanks to my partner Sarah and all of you who believed in what we were building, it's become something more. A place of learning, of community, of hope." Applause. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Tonight our students will share what they've learned. But more than that, they'll share why this place matters, why education matters, why art and music and dance matter even in a harsh land like ours. More applause. Then Jace looked directly at Sarah. "Sarah, would you like to say a few words?" She stepped out of the wings, her heart pounding. Public speaking still terrified her, but she owed these people honesty. "A year ago," she began, "I came to Tucson for revenge. I was consumed by grief and rage, ready to destroy myself and anyone in my path." She saw some surprised faces in the audience. "Good. Let them know the truth. But some people showed me a different path, showed me that healing is stronger than hurting, that building is braver than burning down." Her eyes found Victor in the back row. He nodded, acknowledging the words. "So I built this, with Jace, with your help. And now 23 children have a place to learn and grow, to become something more than their circumstances." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "My husband died believing truth and justice mattered. This school is part of his legacy, and I'm honored to continue it." Standing ovation. Sarah felt overwhelmed, humbled. The recital began. Her students performed beautifully fan dances and flamenco piano pieces and violin solos. Every performance a small miracle of dedication and courage. At the end, Sarah took the stage one last time, not to teach but to dance. She performed the fusion piece she had created, Chinese fan dance merged with the Spanish, flamenco merged with classical ballet, East and West, and everything in between. Just like her. Just like Tucson itself, a melting pot of cultures finding harmony. The final note hung in the air. Sarah froze in her closing pose, breathing hard. Then the applause crashed over her like a wave. People standing, cheering, some crying. Jace met her as she came off stage, pulled her into his arms. "You were magnificent," he whispered. "We were," she corrected. "This is ours, together." That night, after everyone had left and the saloon was quiet, Sarah and Jace stood on the porch watching stars emerge. "I have something for you," Jace said. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Sarah's heart stopped. "Jace, it's not what you think. I mean it is, but..." He opened the box. Inside a simple silver ring. "This was Emily's, my sister's. She wore it every day until she died." Sarah stared at the ring, touched beyond words. "I'm not asking you to marry me," Jace continued quickly. "Not yet. We've only been together 6 months and I know you need time. But I wanted you to have this, as a promise, that when you're ready, if you're ready, I'll be here." Sarah took the ring, slipped it on her right hand. Perfect fit. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being patient, for understanding. Take all the time you need. We have the rest of our lives." Continued 10:46 a.m. They stood together in comfortable silence watching the desert night. A rider approached. In the darkness, Sarah couldn't make out features, but something about the bearing was familiar. The rider dismounted, stepped into the light from the saloon windows. Victor Dalton, looking older but at peace. "Forgive the late visit," he said, "but I wanted to tell you in person. The territorial governor has been convicted on all charges, and the new governor has officially pardoned all my crimes related to the anti-corruption activities. I'm a free man." Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. "Victor, that's wonderful. It's more than I deserve, but I'm grateful nonetheless." Victor handed her an envelope. "This is for you, payment for everything you did, everything you risked." Sarah opened the envelope. Inside a banknote for $5,000. "I can't accept this," she said immediately. "You can and you will. Use it for the school, to expand maybe, or to pay yourself a proper salary." Victor smiled. "You gave me back my son's honor. It's the least I can do." Before Sarah could argue, he tipped his hat and mounted his horse. "One more thing," he called as he prepared to ride out. "I'm starting a ranch. Legitimate this time. Raising horses. If you two ever need good stock, you know where to find me." He rode off into the darkness, leaving Sarah and Jace staring at the banknote. $5,000, Jace breathed. "We could build an actual school building. Separate from the saloon. We could hire more teachers, offer more classes." Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. "We could make this something permanent. Something that has a legacy," Jace agreed. Sarah looked at him, this good man who'd waited so patiently for her to heal. This partner in Erbion, every sense of the word. "Jace asked me." "Ask you what?" "Ask me again. About the ring, about marriage." Jace's eyes widened. "Sarah, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." She took his hands. "You've given me 6 months to grieve and heal and find myself. And I have. I've found that I'm stronger than I knew. That I can build instead of destroy. That I can love again without betraying the love I had before." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Jace dropped to one knee right there on the saloon porch. Took her hand gently. "Sarah Chen-Morrison, will you marry me? Not because you have to, or because enough time has passed, but because you want to build a future together." "Yes," Sarah said, no hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you." Jace stood, kissed her deeply, and in that kiss, Sarah felt everything. Grief transformed to gratitude, pain transformed to possibility, death transformed to new life. They would marry in spring, she decided. In the garden behind the new school building they'd construct with Victor's money. Sister Maria would officiate. Her students would perform. And Daniel would be there too, in memory and spirit. Not a ghost to haunt her, but a blessing to carry forward. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Running a school in the frontier territory would bring challenges. Building a marriage would take work. Healing would be ongoing, not a destination, but a practice. But Sarah had learned something crucial in her year of grief and rage and redemption. Love was stronger than revenge. Building was braver than burning. And choosing to live fully to honor the dead by embracing life, that was the most powerful thing of all. She looked out at the desert, at the stars scattered like diamonds across the vast sky. Somewhere out there, Daniel was at peace. Emily was at peace. Thomas was vindicated. Justice, however imperfect, had been served. And here, in this small corner of the Arizona territory, Sarah had found her place. Not as a widow consumed by grief, not as an avenger consumed by rage, but as a teacher, a partner, a woman learning to love again. Emily's rest would continue, would grow, would touch hundreds of lives in the years to come. And Sarah Morrison, soon to be Sarah Reeves, would lead it all with grace and strength and the hard-won wisdom that came from choosing light over darkness. "Ready to go inside?" Jace asked softly. Sarah squeezed his hand. "Ready." They walked into their saloon, their school, their future together as partners, as lovers, as builders of something beautiful in a harsh land. Behind them, the desert wind whispered across the hills. And if you listen closely, you might hear it carrying messages from the past. Live fully, love deeply, build something that lasts. Sarah heard those whispers and smiled. She was home. Thank you so much for joining Sarah on her incredible journey from grief to healing, from revenge to redemption. If you love this story of love, justice, and second chances in the Old West, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. What did you think of Sarah's choice to forgive instead of seeking revenge? Would you have made the same decision? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing from you. And if you want more stories about strong women finding their way in the Wild West, check out the playlist linked above. Trust me, you won't want to miss them. Until next time, remember, healing isn't forgetting, it's honoring the love and letting go of the pain. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and I'll see you in the next story.